welcome on what is a lovely evening for football. Guy Mowbray with you for commentary alongside Sue Smith. And we've got a squad battles game on the way. What are we going to get from this one, Sue?
I'm anticipating a good match today. It's important they get off to a good start, play their way into the game, be confident on the ball, and hopefully we won't be disappointed.
Joe Linton. Now with Casemiro. Taking a chance. You could feel the frustration after that. Possibly should have hit the target. Here's how the home side lines up.
Yeah, it does look like a 4-4-2. Out of possession, I'm sure they'll stay compact in their shape. They'll shift across the pitch together. But when they go forward, the central strikers are going to be key to hold the ball up while waiting for runners.
They
Do you know where this phrase comes from? You don't. The Nazi eugenics program. How was that Holocaust started?
Yeah,
The issue is you're really morally loading all of these things.
But
Hold on, I gotta be allowed to
That's fine.
Right? You are morally loading this, but suffering matters a lot, right? This idea,
Yes, it does.
even Christianity doesn't really have this idea that death and killing is the ultimate greatest evil. It seems like the greatest evil is probably blaspheming the Holy Spirit and something
Don't fear who can kill.
Well, death isn't evil. Like the worst thing that can happen to you is dying and then going to hell in Christianity. But death isn't evil. The concept of death is not evil. But killing somebody unjustly is an immoral action. It's
Body who killed the soul.
and the deaths of souls, right?
Sure.
The impugnation that happens in a person's being and psyche as they fall further and further away from Christ. That's probably the greatest evil, right? And so even you would grant me that there are times where we obviously justify killing people, even maybe people that don't necessarily deserve it, because you're for the Crusades, right? You're for holy wars, even though the wars were driven by Christians.
I am not in favor of directly killing human beings.
So
I'm only in favor of
Christians who participated in the Crusades are wrong. The knights who killed Crusades, right? You're for holy wars, even though the wars were driven by Christians.
I am not in favor of directly killing human beings.
So
I'm only in favor of
Christians who participated in the Crusades were wrong. The knights
Well, they
who
didn't.
if they engaged in unjust wars. But if you were engaged, the point is, if you were in a just war for a good cause that satisfies just war criteria.
Yeah, so this is to my point. My point is not that. My point is actually there are going to be times and places where we do justify the killing of other people. We just do. We do this all the
But
time.
I don't do that when they're not holding a weapon in their hand. When they're just your sick relative.
Well, when they've taken over Constantinople, Jerusalem, for example, they might just be vibing and chilling there for a while. I imagine we probably
we were talking about euthanasia. We're talking about our sick relatives.
Well, we're talking
not
about
captured Constantinople.
Well, the principle.
No, my principle is innocent. Let's just start with innocent people. We don't directly kill innocent people. You said, well, if they're really sick, we agree with their assessment that their life is not worth living.
Yep.
But my problem with that is
The difference between now and their death is nothing but suffering.
you are going. But here's the thing: you're going to be.
wait, you decide what a life is worth living? Why should we accept your view? Who are you? Who are you to decide what life is worth living? Why don't you let that person make the decision for themselves, if they're able to, of course?
Inconsistent or subjective where you draw the line. Because let's say, for example, a
It won't
quadriplegic.
be inconsistent. Will it be subjective? Potentially, but that doesn't make things
Can
necessarily
someone look at a 20-year-old quadriplegic and choose suicide?
Probably not, no.
They could have 60 years of suffering.
Almost all the evidence shows that most people that experience quadriplegia, for example, because as long as there's not great amounts of pain associated with it, have pretty normalized happiness.
So you're going to tell them if they say to you, I'm miserable and I'm going to die, you're wrong. Well, why can't I say that to someone who's dying of cancer and has 6 months left to live? Yeah.
Because the difference is that when you look at the individual...
You're allowed to tell them they're
Can I
wrong.
respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, why? You're doing the slippery thing.
What do you mean, why?
You're acting as though we're doing the same thing. I'm basically rule for me and not for thee. But I have a very specific reason as to why this may or not be allowed, which is suffering. If you have somebody at a 4th stage of cancer, have you ever watched somebody go through 4th stage cancer?
Not personally.
Okay.
Wait, but again, a person who is without, if they're quadriplegic, What if they're suffering too? What if they tell you they're suffering?
It's horrifying. They slowly sink into their body. They are filled with pain to the point that the only way we can help them manage is basically making them barely conscious most of the time. It's awful. And I think that if there's a point in time, like when I look at my husband's grandma, what she said, she wanted to go home to die in dignity. That's what her was. Catholic lady as well, by the way. She wanted to go home and not drink or eat and die because she knew she was going to. She just had a stroke. She could barely move, right? There was no hope for her. She was like 86. There isn't really any good empirical evidence that there's a high hope of recovery for getting her body back. Her body was degrading over time, and she already had a number of ailments coming into it. What she had to look forward to was being unconscious, in the hospital, poked and prodded, and in pain until she expired, which is exactly what she got to experience. That is very different than the empirical things that we can assess and know about the experience.
Wait a minute, but you do acknowledge everybody's experience is different. So even empirically, even if most people who are quadriplegic are relatively happy, that's not every individual person. Just like not every single individual person who has stage 4 cancer has that feeling. There are people who are stage 4 cancer. Oh, I have 6 months left. I'm going to, use that whatever time I have left. There are people who have that mindset. They don't have a lot of time left, but they will still value the time they do have left.
And that's the difference that I'm making. It is an empirical test.
But in Canada, you can apply for assisted suicide for these permanent kinds of disabilities.
And say for all elements of Canada assisted policy.
Okay, good.
Assisted suicide. For example.
But the problem is it becomes a slippery slope when you start to allow it.
It becomes a slippery slope mostly because nobody's brave enough to have a conversation to figure out what the actual specific line is. And I think the line should be the consent of the individual and the empirical evidence to align with their assessment of their future of suffering. And if the evidence is there, yes, you're going to be in pain and barely conscious until you die, yes, we should give them the dignity. In the same way we let elders jump off of cliffs back in the day so that they could be saved of the indignity and pain and suffering of
I disagree with that.
These things. And I think some of these things are okay. Just have a version of it.
No, and I think that when a society is more comfortable allowing people, especially the elderly, to kill themselves and not be a burden, they have failed.
That's what I'm interested in.
But
that's not my line.
But you gave the example of people being in the past being okay with people jumping off a cliff, or putting excluding them on the ice sheet, sending them.
Sure. Well, I said because in modern times because here isn't the burden. It's suffering.
It's the individual choosing.
It's two things. Because it's not just the individual choosing.
Well, why should an individual be allowed to choose to end their own life just because they want to?
Because they think a life worth living and that they'll be convinced of that typically pretty quickly. Most cases have worked with a lot of unaliving patients.
So you're okay with restricting individual choices even if the person wants to? Because
when have I ever said I'm a liberty maximalist?
Because it causes people harm. No, I'm just trying to assess your world.
Well, the issue is what in this conversation has made you to even suspect that I wouldn't be a liberty maximalist.
This is like the 15th time you asked this question.
Based on everything that I've said.
Because you're all over the place on the different issues. I don't have.
Consistent.
Well, no, because it's hard. You will take, for example, what matters is somebody's soul. But then it's okay to kill them if they consent to it, but not if they consent to it and they don't have a good reason for doing it. So
there's
all these markers that seem added on.
Can choose to die, and that we can align and agree with the dignity of that choice because of the future that we know that.
And I think that we should that anybody choosing suicide, we should treat all of them the same and help them out with that decision.
That's the issue. That's totally fine that you.
I'm going to make a judgment. Some people's lives are worth living.
That's totally fine. The thing that's happening here that I think I'm getting frustrated by is I'm willing to engage with your idea and go, I think some of your arguments are totally reasonable and sound. So are mine. And instead what you're doing is you're kind of strawmanning me increasingly and then saying, well, that's ridiculous. And I was like, well, yeah, the strawman is ridiculous, but those aren't my positions. The positions that I have are logical. They are some. You disagree with them because there are certain qualia of moral.
I still don't understand your position on abortion because you're saying, because I said ensoulment doesn't, we agreed ensoulment didn't matter. It was having.
We did not agree with that. Ensoulment does matter.
Okay, but you said ensoulment wasn't related to the question of legally conferring the right to life.
in the context of like judicial law.
Yes, of course. Like the law that it's wrong to kill a human being either after birth or before birth. And what I asked for, what is the standard for determining the conferral of the right to life? Like, who is the proper recipient of that right?
Right now, for me, it is installment as evidenced by a complex enough brain activity to suggest that consciousness is possible. Because obviously, in development, their consciousness could break down and no consciousness would be possible. Probably that child would be missing.
Do you mean possible in the near sense? Like, you could be conscious in 5 minutes?
No, I only care about the time present, not the future.
What does consciousness mean?
They typically point to, so when there's 5 major divisions of the brain, this is like neuroscience, so I'm not talking about the lobes, so that people get confused. I think it's not the lobes. There are...
Wait, consciousness is the 5 lobes? Like, what does it mean to be conscious? Like, having 5 lobes? I would say... like, consciousness is difficult because there's like 15 different definitions. I would say when most people say conscious or consciousness, it's just the state of being awake and aware of your surroundings. And then you could add also being self-aware, i.e. aware of your own existence. Like, if you're unconscious, you're obviously not aware.
Lizards, for example, have 3 divisions of the brain in how they...
Yeah, but lizards are still conscious to some degree. It's not like they're not conscious. A lizard, like an iguana, is still aware of its surroundings.
You're right, it's totally developed. They have all 5 divisions of the brain.
With the home fans in positive mood.
There is sufficient brain activity in that fetus brain that we go, yes, that brain is operational, functional, and exists as like the closest approximation to what we know human brains and brain existence.
Here's my problem with your position. If the conferral of the right to life is based on the present capacity of consciousness, as you've defined it, will lead one of 2 acceptable outcomes. Either he's so many mammals pass the test, even rodents, like rats, for example, pigs, that will say, oh, they have consciousness, they have a phone.
And they animals have consciousness that humans do.
Who's more conscious, a pig? Who's more conscious, a rat that can solve a maze or a newborn infant?
Wait, hold on. You see, that's the point I was going to say here. Hold on. You said consciousness. You didn't mention anything about the threshold of consciousness. You just said consciousness. So now, do you value consciousness or do you value a threshold of consciousness? And he's correct. A newborn, a pig, a rat is way... Like, a rat is way more conscious and way more intelligent than a newborn. A newborn can't figure out a maze. A rat can. All right, a pigeon is very intelligent too. An adult elephant can recognize its own reflection in a mirror. And a newborn can't do that. So you can just give a scenario. What if this newborn had a terminal disease and they would die within a month after being born? Is it okay to kill this newborn? Because they're less conscious.
The rat is higher intelligence, but I don't think it's more conscious. It's just the rat doesn't go, I think that's right.
Neither does the newborn.
They do, to some extent. Well, they do. For example.
I don't know. I think I just had 3 children. I laughed at the idea of a newborn.
Okay.
Of a newborn.
So you'll know about this. There's a really cool study. When you take...
Wait, you think a newborn says, I think, therefore I am? How? I mean, you could say the same thing about an elephant. How does a newborn even think? Show us.
Rats. And you show them a paradigm of puppet rats playing with each other. One of the rats is eating the rat, and one of the rats is nice to the rat. Do you know if rats, like infant rats, show pride?
Let's say infant rats and fully grown rats. You don't have to go. It's not one-to-one.
Sure. Let's say fully grown rats.
I do not know if rats can do the empathy thing here. I know that older children can.
No, children as young as we can possibly test it for can.
But not for newborns.
Yes, newborns are as... Like, we can't test until about 4 months because their eyes are so undeveloped that we can't know what...
Exactly.
But the youngest we can possibly reasonably test for a moral view of essentially treat others well exists in, like, 4 months.
That's not necessarily consciousness. For example, many animals can pass the mirror.
It might not be, but it's for sure evidence of ensoulment because that child is orienting
Well,
towards.
why wouldn't we say mammals that can pass the mirror test and can identify that there's a
because you
dot
can
on
train
their...
mammals on a mirror test, and I don't care about identity. That's an identity question.
How is identity not related to consciousness?
Because it's possible that something can be conscious and not have a strong sense of identity. Ask anybody, for example, who's had a left.
Well, I would say self-awareness is different from being aware of your surroundings. It is different. Although I think the definition of self-awareness isn't there, but like being able to recognize your own reflection is kind of a big deal.
Parietal stroke.
I would say if you can recognize your own reflection, you're clearly more intelligent. I would say, generally speaking, than the average animal. Just to think that an elephant, like an adult elephant, looks at a mirror, is that intelligent enough to know that it's looking at itself. That if that's not intelligence, I don't know what it is. It's like you are literally aware of what you're looking at.
My problem here, once again, you're using the label conscious to say, okay, that's where you have a right to life.
What's consciousness? Can you define it?
I would define a different consciousness from sentience. Sentience is awareness of the outside world and bodily sensation, light, dark, heat, cold, pain, pleasure. Consciousness is having rational reflection that goes beyond a sense of self that goes beyond non-human.
I would say that's an interesting definition. I would say it's the other way around. I would say consciousness is the state of being aware. Sentience is just a subjective experience.
I'm Guy Mowbray, and I'm
capable of is a distinctly human ability, having rational reflection that goes beyond bodily sensation. Light.
I would say rationality, or at least higher rationale, is just different in general.
Dark, heat, cold, pain, pleasure. Consciousness is having rational reflection that goes beyond a sense of self that goes beyond what non-human animals are capable of. Is a distinctly human ability that does not exist in humans until they're what?
Because then by your logic,
I would not say
conscious?
I would not say that they're conscious. No, they have an internal sense of.
But that's because I would say morality is the key thing of consciousness here for me. And so as young as we can possibly test, 4-month-old infants seem to have a sense of morality. At least treat people poorly. And if I see somebody treating another poorly, I don't like that.
That doesn't mean that they think I ought not do that. They just see something that scares them. Just like if a dog saw another dog being beaten up, they might be scared. Well, that might happen to me, and I don't like that. Or they might. I don't like this thing out here.
You don't think that we have like inborn into us?
I think we do, but there's a capacity for them.
I think that there's a capacity.
Well, I mean, from a Christian view, yeah, but like that seems like more of a survival instinct than a moral. Like, yeah, I think he's correct. It's like a dog probably wouldn't want that to happen to them. It's like that's like a survival instinct, which literally all organisms have, like to stay alive. Like, okay, I don't want that uncomfortable thing to happen to me.
I believe the capacity.
My position now. Yes, the unique thing about human beings is our ability to engage with morality. And as we can test, infants have very rudimentary but moral systems that dogs do not.
No, they don't. What are you talking about? A 4-year-old, a newborn, has no concept of morality to conceptualize these things. Like, morality is, I would say morality is something that you can conceptualize. You actually have to think and rationalize these things. That's just survival instincts.
My position would be this, that you could do tests to see rational and possibly even moral behavior in non-human animals, but those non-human animals are not persons with a right to life. However, among all humans having equal right to life, and that would be another problem. Do we have an equal right to life, an equal basic rights? Well, if our rights are contingent on a property that comes in degrees, like moral awareness or consciousness, there's no ground for it being an equal right. And there's going to be some humans that completely lack it, like a newborn infant or a 9-month-old. I mean, do you think a 20-week-old fetus, they don't have moral awareness, they have the division in their brains, but I would say that they're a person because they will eventually develop distinctly human capacities long after birth. But that's also true of every unborn embryo and fetus.
Yes, that is true of every.
And that is where I ground their rights.
Future like ours. I understand. I'm
not future like ours. It's just that they have this capacity to develop is indicative of their human nature.
Yes, their potential. Right? The thing that I'm saying here is that, again, their human nature...
No, the potential to develop it, but this nature is actualized, it's not potential. The nature is intrinsic once it comes into existence.
Is complicated because, again, into biology, we know that basically, well, we can print organs. We can probably clone humans now because we've cloned animals. We just don't for good ethical reasons. Because...
No... I mean, we could... Oh, I don't... This is a glitch. We could do it in the future. But we could do it in the future of cloning for ethical... I mean, it doesn't follow, because a human is obviously way more complex than, like, animals. Like, humans are much more complex.
There is this major question of, what is that clone? Are they ensouled? Are they truly...
Are you talking about cloning humans or cloning animals?
Humans. Yeah, we don't clone humans for ethical reasons.
There's also commercialization, that if you're and that's why I'm also against things like commercial
surrogacy. There are other things, so would you, before we go off, would you grant me that the main reason that we don't clone humans is ethical concerns?
Yes.
We don't know what that being is.
Yeah, well, not that we don't know...
Oh, I would still give that human the same exact moral consideration. That's why I don't use ensoulment. You could just say ensoulment is something that all human organisms have, because it's just intrinsically linked to humans. Just the DNA structure. Because you're a human, you will automatically have a rational soul. Because if they don't have a rational soul, they wouldn't be a human. Because you're changing the nature of what it means to be a human. Or not what it means to be a human. You're changing an essential property. Like, if it's intrinsic, all humans would have this regardless. So a clone of a human is obviously a human.
What the being is, but that human life is such a sacred thing to take, and this is something that even secular people can at least recognize, to take it outside of the act designed to create human beings. It's a very risky, it's just a dangerous and immoral thing to do.
Sure. So,
but we would know that it's a member of the human species.
To go to heaven or hell?
It's a human, it's a human being.
But does it have a soul that can go to heaven or hell?
It'd still be wrong to kill them.
Does my clone have a soul?
It's the same. It's the same as if you were, like, identical twins are kind of like clones. Like, you could have an embryo and then it splits 14 days later.
Well, identical twin, the closest thing, it's not a one-to-one. Just like the closest thing to pregnancy, the closest thing there is, it's not a one-to-one, but the closest thing to pregnancy is, like, conjoined twins. Like, because they exist the same place at the same time. So the closest thing to a clone is identical twins, because DNA structure, obviously their behaviors are not the same, but the closest thing to clones are identical twins. Because on the DNA sets, well, except for, like, fingerprints, because no one has the same fingerprints, but identical twins have the same exact DNA. The only difference between a clone is a true 100% copy. A clone would have the same fingerprints, but nobody has the same fingerprints.
Absolutely outstanding. He's been the standout, the difference between the two teams.
It doesn't mean that the twin doesn't have a soul, unless it's the twin.
Well, they got a one soul or two souls.
That's when we're not sure.
Exactly.
But
two souls.
We know that's a human being, and we ought not strike to kill.
Just to pause you. That's the point I'm making. That we don't know about the soul. It's hard to know.
Again, that's the reason why you shouldn't support the ensoulment theory. That's why you should reject the ensoulment theory. Or if you do have this theory, it should be protected from conception.
And so you hedge it as conservative as possible, right at conception. And I think that that's fine for you to do. But I think there's a lot of problems that you run into with that logic. Like, is there one or two souls at conception? Does that mean that God is dooming?
No, at conception there would be one soul, right? But then the monozygotic twins, there would be two.
It
It wouldn't matter anyways, because it's still wrong.
50% of human souls to never live? Why?
Why are you saying because of miscarried children?
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't.
If his soul begins at conception.
Yeah, sure. Because here's my argument that 1,000 years ago, and in many rural areas today around the world, child mortality is 50%. Half of all children will not survive past the age of 5. And that was true throughout most of human history.
And unfortunately, like, this is a very common misinterpretation of the statistic, right? When people say the life expectancy for most of human history was like 30 or 40 years, that's because of the child mortality rate. The child mortality rate was so high, it inflated those stats. It was not uncommon for people to live to 60, at least, especially if you were like the elite of society, right? The reason why the mortality rate, people didn't live very long, or the stats, is because of child mortality was so high that inflates the stats.
God designed our bodies. God designed the woman's body insofar as almost 50% just don't even.
God also designed the world too, and
well, I would argue that disease.
Wait, no. She is not a Christian. This is the fall of man theory. No. God. So obviously she's talking about, like, okay, women will have pain and stuff like that. That's the fall of man. Again, because that's because they disobeyed against God. That was the punishment of doing so. If they didn't disobey against God, there would be no miscarriages. There would be no death, no suffering. Again, if Adam and Eve didn't disobey God, there would be no suffering. There would be no death. Death wouldn't exist. At least not in the way that we know it. That's not the world. The world, miscarriages, that's the fall of man. The world that you see now is not God's original design.
That's a misplacement.
Do you think that disease is God designed, or that it's like a state of fallen nature?
Fallen nature.
The fact that the womb is incapable of supporting human life is probably, in many cases, that's also an aspect of fallen human nature. My point is just that you brought up an example. Well, there's a high. How can we say that all these embryos have souls when they have a 50% mortality rate? Well, by that logic, a 4-year-old medieval child has a 50% mortality rate. It doesn't mean he doesn't have souls.
Well, it's pretty different, right? In one case, the child is dying as a result of the fallen state of nature of man, causing disease or infirmities. Or in the other case, it's literally just it's a physical issue of women's bodies. Like this isn't.
And our bodies have been corrupted because of the fall. Yeah.
So just all women's bodies, because this is not like it's not like some women miscarry and other women just never do. Almost all women will miscarry most of the time because we don't know about it.
Human death was never a part of God's plan. So if we had not fallen, there would not be miscarriages.
So God built our body before the fallen state, right?
Right, but then after Adam and Eve fell...
Yeah, God built their body before the fallen state, but pregnancy did not exist until after the fall. And there was no death physically for humans. There was no death before the fall. So yeah, God created human bodies, right? Perfect. They were perfect. There was no imperfections. There was no flaws. That only happened until after they sinned.
We have corrupted human natures, which is why we and our children die.
So did Eve's uterus change before?
Yes, before.
After.
Her
whole human nature and Adam's.
But her biology.
Yes.
Her biology literally changed.
Yes.
Because Adam and Eve would not have died in the garden. So their biology changed in some way.
Okay.
That God said, "You will not die," then they ate the fruit, and then they died.
Yeah, their body obviously physically changed. Before the fall, right, there was no death. So physically, Adam and Eve, if Adam and Eve did not eat the fruit, humans would not experience physical death. So their biology obviously changed. Now because they committed sin and transgressed against God, now humans experience physical death.
Right.
Believe that that's what God revealed, and you believe that.
Of course. So again, the point that I'm making here is not that you can't have reasonable, rational answers for what you're saying. My point is that when you keep scoffing at my position and acting like it's not reasonable or incoherent as
Because you've given us reasons, you've given us justification to reject your view. That's fine. Again, you have no idea when ensoulment begins. That's also just a presupposition that begins when consciousness begins. Your definition of consciousness has flaws, just like many other people who define consciousness, right? So you've given us reason to reject your view, and you clearly illustrated how you don't know how Christianity works. Obviously, their bodies physically change. If your body physically changes if you go from a state of not being able to physically die, then physically die, obviously. And again, pregnancy did not exist before the fall.
I disagree with
Disagreeing is totally fine. Painting my position as inconsistent and incoherent is not fine.
It is.
No, I said at least I have you respond. We have 3 chats come through. This should be an interesting game. If you want to send something in, as a reminder, $10 display, you can do that via Streamlabs or YouTube Super Chat. $99 read, you can do that through Streamlabs or YouTube Super Chat. We have via Streamlabs, Flavius here has a message coming in here. Treatment, this Adderall sniffer, or don't shoot the messenger, orbiting around.
Wait, why wouldn't I shoot the messenger? Why are you reading this?
What do you mean?
Do you think it's true that I'm an Adderall sniffer? Why are you reading this?
What do you mean? Why am I?
Well, it's a very strange thing to do, right?
What?
Well, you're saying it's not me, but you're reading it. You want me to
But he sent in a $200 thing,
but you don't hold that position.
No.
I think it's just reading. I think the policy is just like raise the money.
I understand what the policy is. This is like one of my issues, though, is coming on the same. People pay to view me. That's what's happening.
People, I mean, magnificently.
I'm an extreme vixen. I get death threats. I get swatted.
It's not that deep.
I think it's reasonable for me to point out, Brian, that on your show you are having people pay to come in and abuse me.
I mean, okay. I agree. Okay, I'll give her that. I agree. Those I know it's a policy. I don't agree with the policy, but I think the policy. I think this was stated before they even got on the show. I'll give her that. I don't agree with the policy, and I don't like people who give death threats. I think it's disgusting. That being said, that is a huge accusation to say that the reason why he's reading those is because he told those people to say those things. Like, hey, say this, right? And I'll give you a shout out. Like, pay up. If you pay me, right, I'll give you a shout out in the video, and I want you to say this too, right? That's crazy. That's a crazy accusation. No, he does not agree with what those people are saying in the comments. No, I don't agree that he should be reading them, but to say that like he told these people to say that, that's a crazy accusation.
It's like
again, I wouldn't. I mean, who knows? That stuff may be true, right? I wouldn't say that stuff. I don't think that message should be read. If you're gonna have like the other one that Trent Horn read. If you're gonna have those super chats, they should be questions. I think Q&A should be saved until the end. But if they're gonna be questions, because now I think this is a derail, and honestly, it takes off the conversation. But they should be questions about the debate that you have to ask each people.
Somebody stepped your toe, you got abused by the table.
Yeah.
Well, I think it goes above the level of it's a malicious or false. It's kind of fake. It's not just like it's not abuse though. Hold on, abuse is
Yes.
I would say really malicious. They'll give you slightly.
They spend $200 to be malicious.
Yeah, I would say that is kind of malicious. Like, mind you spent $200 to insult somebody. Like that, you could pay your car insurance with $200. Like you are like really hell bent to do something, right? To donate. Like you spent $200 just to insult somebody. That's dedication. Like that's clearly malicious. That's dedication to do something. Who would spend $200 just to insult somebody? You must have a lot of freaking money to do something like that.
I could have bought 8 malaria nets. I could have bought 8. Yeah, I do. I mean, that could have bought 8 malaria nets.
Look, some of the comments also happen. I don't think it's just directionally towards you.
I just don't appreciate when you pretend as though you're agnostic when you're directional. You're personally benefiting entirely off of your.
I mean, it's not that deep. It is.
Malicious.
To be fair, though, it's his show, and we stepped into the arena.
Absolutely. It drives me crazy when Brian pretends it's not me.
Yeah, that's the thing. If I knew, that's why people don't want to be on a Whatever podcast. If I knew he was going to do that, I wouldn't be on the show. I would be interested. It's like, it's his show. I don't agree, but I chose to be on the show. This is what I expect.
It's not me. You sure about that?
I think you're overthinking this, Kyle.
I'm not overthinking.
I think he would to do his man.
Yeah.
Oh, trust me, they call me fat. They call me all kinds of terrible things, It is what it is. Anyways, look, let's not get into a meta discussion over these things. Read it.
It's your 200.
Hey, Kyla, relax.
It's really simple, right? You're getting your 200.
This Adderall sniffer. See, now I had to repeat it twice. You could have just let me get it.
I want you to sit in the discomfort.
I'm going to have to pull it up a third time now.
Okay.
Orbiting around Destiny is the exact type of Christian trying to subvert Christianity. If she's a Christian, then I'm the Pope abolishing Vatican II and the Filioque.
Trent, what does the Bible say about talking about people's salvation? Do you know?
Talking about their salvation?
Yeah, saying, for example, if I insisted you were not saved, what does it say about Christians doing that?
Jesus said, do not judge by appearances, but judge rightly. So, like, we can judge, like, if you literally were sniffing alcohol on the table, we could be like, that's bad. But to say that without any evidence, that would be calumny, which we shouldn't do to people. We shouldn't critique people based on what we can observe. We could say, like, I think that your arguments that allow for legal abortion are incorrect and morally bad because they lead to a very morally bad thing.
Sure.
And that they lead to consequences that I think are counterintuitive. The other thing I was saying about abortion too is, like, if I just went to somebody on the street, I like my position because I could ask them, hey, is it wrong to kill human beings, innocent human beings? They'd be like, yeah, it sure is. I'd ask them, what's a human being? And then we get to chatting. They'd say, eventually they would see the most sensible definition is just a member of our species. And I think it would point them right away they should be really suspicious of abortion. And so that's where I think putting in public policy is very fair.
As much as possible, right? This goes to my point of why Christians shouldn't be.
Do we have another chat?
I'll start it and we'll come back.
Yes, start. Manic pedantic, if humans are the only biological organisms with inherent value, would you consider reverse xenotransplantation, human to animal, for the sake of the animal's health, immoral? Assume procedure is safe.
Like giving pigs human blood?
No, he's talking about the other way around. He's saying,
I thought it was.
He said human to animal. Like,
would that be human to animal? Like,
he's saying if humans have intrinsic value, can humans donate their organs to save animals?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, can a human donate blood to a pig?
I mean, they can if they want.
That gets into interesting ethical territory.
I have no problem with it. Blood is not soul.
I think that humans should, they can make sacrifices for animals. They should make irrational sacrifices.
Yeah.
So there might be cases where it's wrong.
And we have a frumpled rabbit here. If you admit that it is wrong to kill an innocent ensouled person, but also admit that you don't know the moment when a person gets ensouled, why would you ever say, I think it's okay to kill a possibly ensouled person? Because you are not sure if they're ensouled or not.
At state level, I think that when the state operates on the most conservative policy possible, it breaks the state.
You can use examples, many cases, of the erring on the side of precautionary stances. That's why some pro-choicers, they have precautionary stances, right? They say, abortion is justified at 20 weeks. But there is evidence that they could be conscious before. So the precautionary stance is 12 weeks because, again, the parts that are needed, not the pain receptors, but the parts, I forget the name specifically, needed to feel pain are present at 12 weeks. That's why they would have a precautionary stance, because it is possible that it could begin earlier.
So what I want to see is an overall reduction of abortion, but all of also the negative sequelae associated with abortion, which is why I typically sit at around like 12 to 15 weeks. I think is reasonable to start making the arguments for maybe making it actually illegal if the woman is doing it outside of like medical necessity.
And my response to that would be that tying ensoulment to brain development, at 12 weeks, the brain is far too small to exhibit any unique human behavior. So you're either going to have to give the right to life to mammals that have similar sized brains, or if you say it's because the brain will eventually get big enough for uniquely human behavior, that's also true of embryos, fetuses prior to that.
The most conservative answer is saying the moment at which the brain is operating as similar to a human as possible, we can probably presume that a soul is in there, which is kind of similar to what Aquinas was doing with the 40-day ensoulment.
Yeah, but he was following Aristotle's bad biology.
Well, he was also following Exodus 21.
No, Exodus only deals with what if you accidentally cause him.
Okay, so I think Aquinas, his theory is false, right? Trent Horn has mentioned this before. His theory was like, for example, he had a belief, mind you, I think Aquinas lived in the 1100s, so take what he says with a grain of salt. But he said that, like, his theory was, like that the reason why women or females exist is because it's like an error. There's like something that's wrong with like the blood, and that's how you get women, right? That's how you get females in the womb, which is obviously scientifically inaccurate and false. It's obviously false. So his science is flawed. It's obviously, well, Aristotle lived over 2,000 years ago. Aquinas lived over 1,000 years ago. So obviously their technology, they obviously didn't know these things. But no, as he's going to say, yeah, that refers to an accidental death, so it doesn't follow that abortion is justified. And two, yeah, the ensoulment theory to 40 days, the ensoulment theory, let's say, would take 40 days, right, after conception, right? But the abortion would still be wrong, right? Because even though they didn't know when ensoulment began, some say we would be quickening, they still agreed it doesn't matter if ensoulment occurs or not. It's still wrong to get the abortion anyways.
It doesn't say anything else. The fact that there are different kinds of punishments for different people, like if you accidentally kill a slave in the...
Yes, I knew he was going to say that. Like in the Old Testament, that is mentioned. It doesn't follow that because...
The Old Testament, you're not punished. But if you directly killed the slave, you could be put to death, or you could be severely punished. The translation's ambiguous. But the problem, the Old Testament doesn't have a description of a direct abortion, so we can't glean what the Old Testament
references. 21 should never be presented as evidence. Of course, I agree with what it's actually presenting as God.
Oh, but they do. They do use it. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be an argument for abortion. It's just not related to it. It doesn't follow. Even it doesn't follow. I think she's going to say the value, right? It doesn't follow. Even if it had less value, it still has enough value not to be killed.
There are points in times in which the consequence of killing a child during this period of gestation versus this period has to be different. Maybe God just said it to them because of like functional. When I look at Exodus, I see a lot more practical logic and reason in there than God like ordaining
you,
death.
In numbers, you don't get counted in the census until you're 1 month old, and it's probably because of high infant mortality.
Of course. So we see God engaging though in such a way of going, okay, well,
I think I think he's more accommodating ancient Israelite attitudes.
Possibly, but it's also possible to suggest that God goes, okay, well, there are instances in which killing something, while it's always negative, which
for example, that's correct. The reason why, well, is he said specifically until 1. Let's just say until 5. The reason why, it doesn't mean that they're not valuable. It just means that the probability of them surviving is very low. Once you reach past 5, the probability of you making it to adulthood is much higher. For whatever reason. Even I just did that.
is my position as well. There are times where it is more permissible than other times.
You can't, no, all I would say is that the punishment for accidentally killing is going to vary, but direct killing is, basically always held as murder.
Exodus 21 is direct killing.
No, it's not.
It's when two men struggle and then they hit a pregnant woman, and if she dies or the fetus dies, it's not direct killing.
Well, I would say, okay, it's accidental killing, not intentional.
The Old Testament makes a difference between accidental killing, which would be that's an accidental case, and directly killing. You directly kill somebody life for life.
So if you hit a woman in the midst of an assault.
When two guys are fighting and the lady comes to break them up and she gets hit and she dies, or the fetus dies. Accidental death is just treated differently. We do the same with laws today.
But manslaughter in the Bible is still treated very differently than just a fine, right?
It depends. If you accidentally kill a slave, it just says that the master has suffered the loss himself. He's not punished. You couldn't directly kill a slave.
Should manslaughter be tried the same
today?
No,
because we understand there's different circumstances involved in the accident killing of humans versus purposeful and abortionist purpose.
And put them on the back foot from
even in purposeful crimes, we might have other rules and these sort of things, right? In case of death penalty, right?
A little bit of a check in here.
Or self-defense.
We're at the 20 minutes past the 2-hour mark.
Is there anything? I mean, we're trying to make sure I think we see our difference here.
But that's not good enough.
We have common ground. Like we both identify as Christians. We both believe in God.
No, he's not.
We believe in Jesus. We believe God wants people to act in a certain way. Christian politicians should institute good laws.
Would you grant me? Let me see if you would grant me something with you then.
We'll see.
Would you agree that a lot of Protestants absolutely would like to establish policy that will limit abortion theocracy, such as repeal of the 19th?
Oh yeah, well there's a lot of them. One reason I am skeptical of full-blooded Christian nationalism. Like, I know there's been arguments here on the podcast before that the states should get to have a state religion, even if the federal government doesn't have a federal education system eventually. I'm very skeptical about that because that hasn't worked out well for Catholics in history.
Yes.
Protestants.
Now, that didn't work well for, most of the country, and the country is founded, it was mostly Protestants. It wasn't, obviously did not like Catholics. But he is correct that, so the First Amendment only applied, I think it was up until a Supreme Court in the case in the 40s. Are you serious? it only applied to the federal government. Like, I think 8 out of the 13 original colonies had their own state religion.
Corner is fired in. No danger from
especially
that
for Catholics, who tend to be the minority across the country.
Well,
Yes.
there's been like if you go to medieval Europe, it's
I'm talking about
football in a really good position.
So in
here.
America, you
Yes,
have,
Catholics
like in,
are very
in Oregon, there was a Supreme Court case saying whether the state could force Catholic kids to go to middle school.
Yeah.
And that when the Supreme Court said in Pierce versus Society of Sisters, no, you can't force them to do it. Because public schools don't run schools.
Yeah, I think Massachusetts, when I was researching for this, I found this crazy case in Massachusetts, I believe, where it was illegal basically to be a Catholic priest. They could
It's called the Bubish Act.
yes, and then if those people escaped and came back, it was justification to be to kill them. And in Massachusetts, for Quaker priests, I don't know if it's a priest or like pastors, Quaker pastors were actually killed.
I am for people having the freedom to practice their religion within limits. But I also recognize Catholicism is true. And so I think society can, in very soft ways, point people towards that which is true. Now, in hard cases, I think the law should mostly be used to keep people from gravely harming others or gravely harming themselves. So I think there's a good case to be made that the state should
But you also ban like
contraception. Or let's take things that I think are more, or take adult pornography, explicit content.
Oh, you
At
can't give it
the
away
very
that easily
least,
to
the
his
state
hand.
should require rigorous age verification.
It's a 3-goal
Yes.
lead, and the win almost guaranteed.
The PLM website doesn't work in Texas because it has age verification. There's a lot of states that don't. Well, but the point is, like, but there are sites that don't.
VPN.
Where there are many sites that are shut down because they won't comply with age verification.
yes, the issue is like all that happens then is that you have the same, and so this is going.
But you can put up the same with the same. You can do the same for online gambling, but we could say, hey, this really harms people.
Yeah, it's a VPN. Like, obviously people will go to different sites or VPN, or they'll use a VPN. But I think that illustration, I talked about this many times before to myself.
It's put into the
Why
middle,
are people defending this, right?
and that's been viewed as a foul.
Number one, it doesn't violate the First Amendment to ask for its age verification. Again,
The chance now.
when there were like those pornography shops in the 90s, you needed a verification to get that stuff. Like, look, adult activities, that's just the thing you have to deal with. You can't buy a gun. I'm sure you need age verification to do that, obviously. You need age verification to drink, to gamble, to buy tobacco, all of these things. It's not unique. If this is an adult activity, and I think it should be illegal, right? But, I mean, the least we can do is at least have an age verification if it does nothing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's an adult activity. You should have an age verification to do it.
Still going.
Same thing with gambling.
The try is not. Oh, that's fantastic.
Like, you should be upset. Like, okay, it's the parents' jobs. But again, there's no reason. You haven't explained why it's mutually exclusive. Yeah, it should be the parents' jobs. But you can also put age verifications too. It's a two-pronged tactic. Why can't you do both exactly?
And the referee's whistle brings the
So
first
in the
45 minutes
case
to a close.
of that, right? You should really be angry at these adult websites because why are they so upset?
Firmly in control.
Why are they so upset that people can't just watch their things without age verification? Well, that's because they know children are watching it. That's the reason why. They know full well that a large percent of the money that they're making is from children. That's why I think Pornhub and all these other organizations, all those people should be thrown in jail for a very long time because they're disgusting people. They're evil, disgusting people. They know full well that children are watching their material, and they know that's where they're making their money from. Because why else would that be their reaction? Because people, and also it's just going to turn down their business. The fact that people think they have like a right to watch these things unfeathered without convenience, that's going to upset them, and people are going to just turn off and not watch it. Some people, because they know that cuts into their revenue.
It's an addictive vice. It's bad when people have unfettered access to it. So I think I am in favor of the state mostly using its power to promote Christian virtue to prevent grave harms. I think it can also be helpful if the state, like ideally, I think you can have a Christian state that doesn't oppress people. Yeah, it has different religions, but
theoretically,
supporters dream of and will savor for a long, long time.
Well, here's the replay. Despite lots of pressure from the defender, he manages to hold him off, gets his shot away. It's a good...
the holidays are actually holy days.
I'm not sure if this is a pro-choice. Well, I mean, see, the right to bodily autonomy. Yeah, I don't know if there's a pro-life or pro comment, because you could believe in bodily autonomy and still be pro-life, but you're just asserting. That's why it's just question begging. You're just asserting you lose bodily autonomy when you become pregnant. Bodily autonomy, you would still have bodily autonomy. It just doesn't apply in the case of pregnancy because it's somebody else's body.
Just
theoretically, of course, theoretically,
because it is the state religion while accepting there's pluralism.
Just like conjoined twins would still have bodily autonomy, but just because one twin is connected to the other, it doesn't mean that it's okay for that other twin to kill the other one.
I would probably still refute that because I'm very concerned about what happens to a religion when it is blended with a state. I think it corrupts it.
I love getting more days off, though.
We get days off, but again, of course Christians can politically. Of course Christians can vote on what they feel as Christians are voted for. What they cannot do is make laws, but the only justification that they can point to for that law is the Bible says so.
Why?
If you grant me that, then that's the Christian nationalism
Well, they
I'm
don't.
talking about that is rampant in North America. Then we just need a new word for Christians, like you were just saying. Like, can we just like be Christians and fix and vote based on what we think is right and good? Of course, you should do whatever you want as a and it's
going stronger though to say
But again, James Tallarico does the same thing. The Bible says so, even though the Bible actually doesn't say that. As I said, when it's referring to the the Annunciation, he's saying the Bible's abortion should be allowed because the Bible says so in the Annunciation. Even though the Bible actually unironically disproves this whole point, as I said in my video, he uses the Annunciation to try to justify his position, but the Annunciation, if you actually read the Annunciation, it actually debunks his whole position. Because again, God did not ask Mary. He did not. If he asked Mary, the phrase "will you" would be present. No, he says "you will," which is a command, not a question. If someone walks up to you and says "you will do something," that's not a question. They're not asking you. They're commanding you. They're compelling you to do something.
Duty to shape the state so that grave harms are avoided.
Okay, so shape the state insofar as
like to ban slavery.
So using logic and argumentation.
Yes, because I believe there's four kinds of laws. So there's eternal law. Universe should be.
Yeah.
There's natural law, which is rational creatures participate in that. We use reason. We think, oh, God made the world, and it should be this way. We can look at our bodies, we can look at the world. It should be going this way. Natural law, we can see that. Then there.
I heard in the comments saying virtue ethics came before Christianity. Yes, that's true. But what I'm saying is virtue ethics is compatible with Christianity. Because being a Christian is, we would say, is a virtuous thing. God is a virtuous being. So yeah, obviously virtue ethics predates Christianity. But God, it aligns with God. And mind you, yeah, the religion of Jesus Christ, like Christianity, virtue ethics predates Christianity, but God, if Christianity is true, God has always existed. So anyways, God's laws, God's morals would predate virtue ethics anyways, because God is eternal and transcends virtue ethics.
Is positive law. So, God didn't reveal in the Bible what the speed limit should be. We kind of have to deliberate. It's pretty
Yes.
amoral, because if you didn't have any speed limits, a lot of bad things would happen.
Well, I mean, I could kind of agree with her. But like, if he didn't have speed limits, yeah, that's probably really bad.
You could say it's immoral.
Bad things happening doesn't mean something is happening, right?
Not necessarily, but if you could intervene to prevent the bad things with a simple law, it could be immoral. you failed it.
Maybe, but you just haven't been the logical case, right? And that's all I'm saying.
Well, it's not in the Bible, it's not in natural law. We have to use prudence to arrive at
Yeah,
that.
Christians
Then you have positive laws, and then you've got ecclesial laws, divine laws. You have divine law, too. Like, for example, worshiping on Sunday. That's not in the natural law. Like, that's an artifact of history based on Jesus rising from the dead and God communicating to people, I want you to worship on this day.
Yeah.
And so because it's part of divine law, which is funny, do you know in the national